Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to my Politics 2100 video cast here on YouTube. This episode I'm calling American Narcissism, parentheses, Exceptionalism, blocks DC elites from acting to save democracy. So this is a response or a amplification really of some points that Ryan Cooper makes he's one of the columnists for The Week, an Australian paper, and he's an American himself. And his piece is called "January 6th Shows Impunity is the Rule for American Elites." And in this piece, he goes into, I think, some detail and really brings out the salient points that are blocking. So basically the Democratic Party elite and also the people who are now in the administration, so not formally, they are maybe some of them Democrats, some of them not, but anyway, the current administration is blocking it from prosecuting the coup attempt of last January 6th. Today is January 6th, 2022, and that was January 6th, 2021. And it's now become abundantly clear that this was a coup attempt, and it was also being planned at the highest levels of the Republican Party, and also in surrounding sort of political operative, either media organizations or other places. And so this particular, and much of it revolves around Donald Trump, but also other figures. And it's, as Cooper observed in his piece, and other people have observed before, that basically it's the low-level rioters that are being targeted and charged, and the planners and the members of Congress for instance, who were involved in planning this coup, are seemingly going to get away scot-free, or at least the speculation is if the trend holds for DC and for in general our American system, for elites not to be held accountable for crimes, that Trump and others will be let off the hook as well. And so, and you have, for instance, the case of Elizabeth Holmes, just recently, just in the last couple of days, being likely facing jail time for her defrauding of other elite people. And so in a way, her crime was to defraud billionaires, and attempt to defraud billionaires. And so she, stepped over the line, so to speak. But ordinarily, if elites are playing around with the rules of American democracy and are that even if they're quote unquote caught, that they are not necessarily visiting, the consequences are not visited upon them, and this is the sort of the typical pattern in our last 20-30 years of our American system, American neoliberal, increasingly oligarchical system. And so anyway, even though Trump is considered to be outside the norm, outside the pale in some way or another, he is extended the courtesies of being an elite, as are the sitting Congress people and so forth and so on, even though they are, many of them, repulsive characters, mentally ill, many of them, in ways that are toxic and sociopathic, and therefore, a danger to others, not just a danger to themselves. So anyway, all of these factors seem to be piling up that make it unlikely that that either Merrick Garland or the January 6th committee / Merrick Garland will really consequently follow the the pattern of evidence to then bring charges against and formally prosecute various people, including Donald Trump. And so, and you know, Cooper does a really good job, I think, in this piece of pointing out that one of the factors, there are two main factors, and I want to highlight both of them. He says, one, we have a system that is very old and is not really very democratic, and is being exploited by the Republicans, you know, in a way that is within the bounds of the system. So, in other words, that there is an opportunity there for putschists, or for people who are planning a coup or planning to radically alter at least the norms of the U.S. system, including conceding an election, allowing independent electoral workers, electoral commissions to determine who wins an election, so forth and so on. All of these norms, in some sense, can be are not written down in stone, and so therefore can be by ambitious ambitious party members or ambitious political actors can simply, if they have the power, they can then exercise the power to, you know, choose the winner of any election without reference to who actually won the total number of votes or the majority of votes. And this is something that the Republican Party is actively planning. But the second sort of barrier that Cooper points out is that basically the people who now have the power to, for instance, pass voting rights act, or to prosecute, or at least to try to pass one, you know, to forestall this effort by the Republicans to create a minority rule country, that people like Joe Biden, Merrick Garland are caught up in a narrative of American exceptionalism, that they don't recognize, that they don't really see the reality of the GOP, the reality of the efforts to overthrow the U.S. government, basically, and the system, the U.S. system, by the Republicans, as being what they are, which are these attempts to overthrow. And it's something that, if you look at international or historical comparison, and Cooper does a good job of doing, you know, some comparisons, that basically throughout history, when groups attempted a coup, they were prosecuted and they were sometimes beheaded, or whatever it was the norm of punishment of the time, to make an example of them, among other things, by the elites or the rulers who, you know, were attacked by this, you know, the people who were planning a putsch and so forth and so on. And he also gives the example of how Hitler in 1920s also attempted a putsch in 1923 and was given a slap on the wrist, and later became chancellor, and then, you know, formed the Nazi regime with the collusion of the Prussian elite, and basically took power in 1933. So anyway, the fact that with a parallel, for instance, with Weimar Germany, is something that American exceptionalism, or this American narcissism, what I'm calling narcissism, but it's usually said American exceptionalism, but it is really just, and Cooper does a good job of pointing out the basically the self-flattery that goes into so much of the culture of DC elite, including the press, and including again, elite members of the Democratic Party, like Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. They are so convinced of the or Barack Obama, for instance, of the exceptional nature of America, that they don't really look at historical comparisons, and or cross-national comparisons, and so they're really unprepared and to look at excuse me, the reality of what's currently happening, and therefore to act consequently and to forestall and to create consequences for elite law breaking. So this is it's interesting that in a way this is narcissism upon narcissism in a funny way, and in that Donald Trump is so the origins of his coup attempt are in his extreme narcissism, in his extreme lack of an ability to accept, for instance, a defeat, and his sense of entitlement to special favors, to special treatment, and the identification of many Americans, including there's a facilitating context, of media and of so forth and so on, that have given a person like Trump, and Trump may not survive, all the different accusations, and also the challenges from within his party that are currently happening, and within the media infrastructure around the Republican Party, because he's not unchallenged right now in his in that domain. But anyway, the building of this culture, or this bubble of lies that insulate either Trump or his followers, or a combination thereof, from recognizing their limited, nature of their electoral non-win. In other words, that they lost in 2020, and then also that they need to accept that that their politics and so forth does not appeal to a majority of the American people, and hasn't since I think once since 1988 has there been a popular vote win in a presidential election for a Republican. So, and that was 2004. So anyway, so this sort of lack of ability to recognize reality and to be high in one's own supply comes in many different areas. So we have the Republicans and the Republican Trumpist base that are living in this bubble of lies about the election, and about but is based on a sense of entitlement that they have. The entitlement, basically, they're the special Americans, they're the real Americans, that they don't really have to play by the rules. And also the people who are would potentially call them to task are also enswathed in this sense of like, well, it's not really that serious, what's happening. It's not really happening here, but unfortunately it is happening here, and it being the end of democracy, or the ending of American democracy, and potentially the formation of something like a fascist America of some kind, or authoritarian, minoritarian ruled U.S. government. So anyway, so this being constantly making exceptions for oneself, and believing that what's plainly before your eyes is not there, is something that I am saying is a narcissistic problem, is a problem of making an exception of the United States when the United States is a sliding into status way far behind many countries that are, not considered to be as rich as the United States or as developed as the United States. But our corruption of our political system is dragging us way, way, way down, and it's not going to change unless elites are held accountable for their crimes. So anyway, so I'm hoping that this video and the resources I'm pointing to are interesting to you, and if you have any thoughts and comments about this particular line of thinking, please share those in the comments. Also, please like the video if you like this video, and also please like and subscribe to Politics 2100 for more content like this. Thanks.